All right, it is a special night in the night of the church as we thank some deacons who have served us well over the past 3 years, and as we welcome some deacons into the deacon ministry. Tonight we welcome 4 deacons. One of them has already served here at the church. One of them has been ordained previously at a different church, and so is new to serving at Utica. And then we have 2 ordination candidates tonight. And we'll get to that in just a moment, but we do want to say thank you to those who have served us well. So we have 8 men who are outgoing deacons. That means they have served faithfully for 3 years. And this night marks the official end of their service. They actually still serve for a few more days until the end of August. And one of the things, men, that I want to encourage you in, one of the things that was shared about Lloyd Pruitt yesterday at his funeral service, Don Harper was sharing that Lloyd was a deacon here and took the deacon family ministry very seriously and prayed for his families and reached out to his families. And then there came a time in his life and in the life of our church where he rotated off as a deacon and did not come back on. But he was still a deacon, and he still prayed for his families and ministered to his families. And so those of you who are going out, I would encourage you to do the same. You've come to know and love the families that you've served. You've been praying for them and reaching out to them, and I want to just encourage you to do that. Our 8 outgoing deacons are Randy Apon, who has served us as deacon chairman for a couple of years or 3 years. 2 or 3 years, probably seems like 6 or 7, right? Terry Argo, Eric Cope, Bry Durham, Dan Eskew, Ben Johnson, Charlie Mize, and Stan Smith. So let's take a moment just to thank them for serving us well. In the description of deacons in 1 Timothy 3, let me turn there. I've got this in the slideshow, but I don't have it in front of me. In 1 Timothy chapter 3, at the end of the passage that deals with deacons and their qualifications, it says in verse 13, "For those who serve well as deacons gain a good standing for themselves and also great confidence in the faith that is in Christ Jesus." So those of you who are rotating off, I hope that you feel that. I hope this has been a rewarding experience for you. And I hope that a year or 2 from now, many of you will be rotating right back on as deacons because we need as many of you as we can have serving. And then we have a number of deacons who are already on the deacon board and will continue to serve in that ministry. That would be Ben Archer, Jay Bobo, Jeff Eckbach, Jay Farmer, George Hemingway, Jerry Holtzclaw, Ben Ivy, Kenny Munkus, Bill Pennington, and Carrie Sartain. So let's thank those men for serving us well and continuing to do that. Have y'all noticed the deacons are listed in the bulletin, in the worship guide? There's a reason the deacons are listed in the worship guide, because we want you to know who they are. Not only do we want you to know who your deacon is, I hope that we don't have to put that in the worship guide for you to remember that. I hope they are in contact with you and reaching out to you and ministering to you well, but we want you to know who all of our deacons are because they are serving our church well, and we would encourage you to be praying for them. But like I said, we have 4 men that are coming on as deacons this church year, and one of them has served us many times. In fact, he's served us as deacon chairman a number of times, and that is Terry Mason, seated right over here. Terry, wave your hand for those of you who may not know Terry. Terry was ordained as a deacon somewhere around 1990, and we are glad to have you, Terry. That's his wife, Sheila, sitting beside him. And Terry has 2 children. He has Kenny and Megan. It might feel sometimes like Sheila's a child. I don't know. But it's probably more so the opposite, where where Terry's pretty childish sometimes. Just kidding. How many times have you served us as deacon chairman, Terry? A number of times, and we thank you for that. We have, as I said, one deacon who has been ordained before, but he hasn't been a deacon here before, and that's Eddie Schrader. And so I've asked Eddie to come up. Where are you, Eddie? I've asked Eddie to come up and just introduce himself. For those of you who may not know him well, he promised that he would talk less than I did this morning. And that's going to be really, really easy, right?
Yes, very good. Well, thank you. I assure you, it will be shorter. I'm Eddie Schrader. This is my wife, Linda. We are currently working on coming up on our 49th anniversary, so we've been together for a while now. Seems like she was a little child when I met her. But we have 2 children, a son named Michael. His wife is Nicole. Some of you may know her as Nikki Ham. She grew up in this church. And we have 2 grandsons with them. Grayson, he's 3rd year, I guess, at Southern right now. And we have a daughter named Lindley who's in high school this year. And we have a daughter, named Michelle, who lives in Colorado with her husband, Eric. And they have 3 children. They have a daughter named Erica who is 2nd year at University of Colorado in Boulder. And then we have Jared and Connor, who are both in high school there in Colorado. And we feel really obligated to go see them as often as possible. And since we're retired now, we try to go out, a couple, 3 times a year. And we'll be headed out in about 2 weeks for a month to stay with them in Colorado and visit them. Since it's been a while since we were able to go out there. I grew up in the 6 Mile area and went to church, member of the church at 6 Mile Baptist Church. Some of you may be aware of that church. That was where I was ordained as a deacon. I served there for I'm not sure how many years, quite a few years, until we moved away from that area up to Charlotte with my wife's job. And then I served as a deacon for a short time period at Bountyland Baptist Church here in Seneca. And so both of those experiences were really good. We had the Deacon Family Ministry Plan as our model for the deacons at 6 Mile, and I really enjoyed that. I was telling the group, the nominating committee group, that at one time we had a dinner every year for the widows of the church and the widows and widowers. And we were planning that, and we were going out, and we would get them, we'd bring them back into the church there for the dinner. And I realized I had 7 on my list, and somebody volunteered to help me, and I said, no, I'll take care of my ladies. I love those ladies and love to enjoy visiting them and getting to know them and helping them whenever they needed help or whatever. And so I just, I worked at Clemson University actually with Lance McKinney, and so have known him for years. Don't tell him what he said. And I retired there in 2002, and since then, a lot of people ask me what I do to stay occupied. I've done quite a few things. I got involved in some mission work when we went to Fort Mill First Baptist Church. They had a team that was going to Brazil there to minister at an orphanage. And so we went down there, and then several times with that group, and then we moved here to Seneca. We took groups from Bountyland several times, and I think I've been there about 12 times total. I've also been on mission trips to Turkey, 2 times to Romania at an orphanage there, and Alaska, and 2 times to Zambia. So I've been doing some of those things, I've actually done some video work for those folks for fundraising for the different orphanages there through the years. And here in the county, I volunteer as a rescue squad responder, and I help with the special medical needs people for the evacuation plan for the county in case we have a disaster of some kind. So I've, stay fairly busy among my household chores, keeping my wife happy. So, but it's an honor that y'all have put enough trust in me to elect me as a deacon, and I look forward to serving here. And please let me know if I can help you.
Appreciate Eddie sharing a few words with us, and also being willing to serve as a deacon. And so hopefully that allowed you to get to know him a little bit better. We have 2 ordination candidates tonight, and I'm going to be calling them up front and sharing a little bit about them and allowing them to share a little bit about themselves. So I'm going to come down to the front, and I'm going to ask for Jess and Kim to go ahead and come up here with me, and we'll stand to begin with. We'll stand right here in the middle. How about that? This is Jess Abel and his wife Kim, and they have a son, Caden, over there. And it was quite a privilege for me to be able to get to know Caden better at Kid Salt this year. He was in my room, and so we spent a lot of time together. And I started the week not knowing that Caden liked to talk. I thought he was pretty quiet. I did not finish the week thinking that Caden was really quiet. But Caden, I really, really enjoyed that and look forward to having an opportunity to get to know you more. But I thought I would just give Jess an opportunity to introduce himself and tell you whatever he wants to tell you.
Well, first of all, Ryan, thanks for stealing my opening joke. That's what I was going to open with. Kim and I have been coming, we've been members a little over 9 years. We're still having trouble pinning down how long we were actually coming, but I do remember when we joined, Don Harper saying, we thought y'all were members already by now. So, but we've been married 13 years. Pastor taught 9-year-old Caden. And I grew up in the Lutheran church, Orangeburg Lutheran. That's where I'm from, Orangeburg, South Carolina. And it's kind of odd. I grew up as a Lutheran. Kim grew up as a Pentecostal, so that's kind of an odd combination, but hey, it is what we make it work. One thing I just wanted to say is I don't have anywhere near Eddie's resume there, so I'm not even going to try. But there was a question I was asked: who in the church has encouraged you? And I literally had trouble with that because there were so many people. I almost felt like saying see church directory. Because we've been blessed to be here. This church has really been a blessing to both of us. See Caden grow up here. And I just really feel privileged to be able to serve God through this church. And if there's anything I can do for any of you, please let me know.
Y'all can have a seat right here. Jess, I want you on the inside and Kim on the outside. All right, and then our other candidate tonight is Andrew Pyle. So I'm going to ask for Andrew and Sarah to come up. And I did not tell Andrew ahead of time that he would have an opportunity to speak. But he is a communications professor at Clemson. So that's right. So he is going to introduce himself now.
Thank you. I feel like this is a practical joke being played on me. Thank you, Pastor Ryan. Sarah and I celebrated our 10th anniversary this summer, so it doesn't feel like it's been that long. She's just being hateful, it's fine. But we've been coming to Utica since 2014. We joined in 2015, and we've really come to feel like family here. One of the stories very recently that I've told a few times is how when we announced that we were moving from here over to Clemson to serve on campus, we had so many people come out to help that there were more people than there was stuff to move. And we've just felt really supported here. We both, for better or worse, are PKs. And if you are a pastor's kid, you know how bad that can mean. But we've been fortunate to grow up with supportive families and to grow up in the church and to be able to serve in a variety of ways. And so we're looking forward to serving together and serving the church in this capacity, and appreciate your confidence in this.
All right, y'all can have a seat. I'll ask for you, Andrew, to sit here, and Sarah to sit on the outside. All right, so just to share a few things before we move into the actual ordination service and laying on of hands. As these two couples are sitting in front of us, it's a good opportunity for me to remind you as your pastor what deacons are all about, and then also how you are related to that. So we're going to get to the Acts chapter 6 very soon in morning worship, and so we'll have an opportunity to explore that passage in depth, which is the origin of deacons. But basically, long story short, the church began to grow, and as we've seen already in the book of Acts, it was not a perfect church, and so sometimes the growth led to some new problems and to some new challenges, and that's how the deacons came about, to basically do some of those practical things in ministry so that the apostles could focus their time and their efforts on preaching the word and praying. And that's what our deacons do here. For those of you who may not know, the deacons here are not a legislative body. They're not a power board. They're not a group that makes a lot of decisions that kind of determine the course of our church. They're a ministry group, and they serve us, and they serve us very, very well. And they do that in 4 particular areas. They help with both of the ordinances. So when we have the Lord's Supper, they prepare those elements for us, and depending on how we observe that on a particular service, they distribute those elements for us, and they assist me in the Lord's Supper. They assist me in baptism. There's a baptism team that makes sure we have towels up there and make sure that everything is prepared from a logistical standpoint, especially for when we have 8 people or 7 people to baptize like we did this morning, and that helps us out tremendously. But the two primary ministries they spend most of their time doing is the benevolence ministry, which is a fancy way of saying when people are in financial need, whether they're inside the church or outside the church, and they come to our church with a financial need. It's our deacons that meet with them and understand that need and learn how we can address that need. They share the gospel with those people if they're from outside the church, and just figure out a way for our church to minister to them. So for many people that come into our church family from the outside, the deacons are really the first faces that they see and the first people they talk to, and they serve us well in that area. And then as Eddie mentioned already, the deacon family ministry is a huge, huge part of what our deacons do. They on average have between 18 and 20 families assigned to them, and they are kind of the first line of defense for those families to care for them and to pray for them and to see if they have particular needs. And so that's what these men will be spending their time doing. And we can read about the requirements for deacons, the characteristics that we expect of a deacon in Acts chapter 6, and then also in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 8 to 13. And I would encourage you during the laying on of hands portion of the service to turn to those passages and pray for our deacons with those things in mind, but also to pray through those passages with yourself in mind, because I think it's always good to remind you there's not one thing that the Bible asks of a deacon that it doesn't ask of every single Christian. All of those characteristics, all of those qualifications are things that the Lord requires of all of us. So those would be good passages for you to reflect on and to talk about. Let me just explain a little bit how we'll do the laying on of hands portion. That's an opportunity for you to pray for these candidates and for their wives. We typically ask for the ordained men of the church to kind of lead that effort. It doesn't have to be exclusive in that effort for praying for Jess and for Andrew, but you'll lead in that effort. So I would ask, when it comes to that point, men, if you'll line up in this aisle right here, and you'll have opportunities to pray for Jess and for Andrew, and just for sake of giving you some practical advice for how to do that, when you come through, I would actually encourage you to lay your hands on them. So what I do is I just put my hand right on their head right here, or on their shoulders, and pray for them, and just lift them up in prayer. Do that for both of these men before you return to your seat. But one of the reasons that the wives are also sitting here is because they need your prayer too. And in the past, we've had them standing behind, and we've had them listening to those prayers and kind of praying along with that. But I have them seated tonight because, women, I want you, as you feel led, to come up and pray for these wives as well. Even as the men are praying for the husbands, you can come along. And so, women, I would ask for you to use the outside aisles as you want to pray for either one of them, and I would encourage you to do that. For those of you who may not want to come forward and pray, there's going to be a slideshow going on that will remind you who our deacons are, tell you a little bit about their families so that you can know them better. There's going to be some scripture prompts on the screen and some ways that we would encourage you to pray. So I would encourage you to use that time to pray for all of our deacons, to pray for our church, that God would bless us. I'm going to read an official ordination charge to these guys, and then we will proceed in the laying on of hands and prayer. So guys, Jess and Andrew, stand up for just a moment, just because of what I've written. You stand before God in this church, having been duly elected to the office of deacon. This office is not about position or power, it is about service. You have not just been elected to be a decision maker, but to be a servant leader. Your actions as a deacon reflect upon Christ and his church more so than others sometimes. You represent this church, so when you live a God-honoring life in this community, this church and her Savior Jesus Christ will be looked upon favorably. The office of deacon carries great responsibilities, but the privileges and rewards far outweigh the burdens. Paul tells Timothy, those who have served well gain an excellent standing and great assurance in their faith in Jesus Christ. According to the word of God and the constitution of this church, do you promise before God and this body of Jesus Christ that you will constantly strive to be honorable and true servants of God and of the church, to be faithful in attendance, wholehearted in giving, open-minded in planning, and patient in seeking the solutions to problems, to lead with a servant's heart, to assist the pastors in implementing and carrying out the ministries of this church, and to earnestly seek God's guidance and his will for this church. If you would pledge yourself to do those things, would you let us know that by saying, I do? All right, you can have a seat. I'm going to pray an official installation prayer, and that will just kick off our time. And so, guys, right after I finish, you can begin to line up and come through and pray for these guys. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the night that you've given us. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to recognize these men, to pray for them, to pray for their wives, but Lord, also to pray for all of our deacons and their families. It is a true honor to be able to lift these up in prayer, and we know how absolutely necessary that is. So, Father, I pray for Jess and for Andrew that, Lord, as they begin to learn this ministry and to get to know their people, Father, I pray that you would give them a vision for what you would have them to see, that you would give them a heart of compassion for people, and Lord, that their love for your Son Jesus might guide them as they serve this church, and I know they will serve this church well. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Thank you, church, for a beautiful thing to see you praying for these four, and to know that you're praying for more than these four. It's a beautiful thing. And guys, I have ordination certificates to just help you remember this night. That's right. Just a way for you to remember what I hope is a very special night for you. And just off cuff, let me just share two examples of how our deacons bless me tremendously. They both happened tonight. So I realized about halfway through the early portion of the service that I made absolutely no preparations whatsoever for music to be played during the laying on of hands. But I'm assuming that one of our deacons, either current or former, has helped us with that. So Jeff, you took care of that, I'm assuming. So thank you for jumping right in and having music for us. That's what deacons do. They help minister on the practical side. And then just a few minutes ago, another one of our deacons came up to me and said, hey, we need to vote on the nominating report, which we didn't do this morning. So we're going to do that right now, unprecedented. We're going to have a vote right in the middle of a deacon ordination service, and then we'll finish the ordination service. So the nominating report has been presented to you in written form, and you've had opportunity to ask questions and give feedback on that, and now it's your opportunity to affirm that and to put that into action. So it comes from the nominating team. It does not need a second, but all in favor of accepting that report and commissioning those on the report, would you indicate that by raising your right hand? And any in opposition by the same sign. And that is unanimous. All right, so the end of our ordination service is an opportunity for you to officially affirm these guys. So we have a charge for you as well, church. Guys, you can go ahead and stand up at this point, and your ladies. And by the way, I'm sure there are several men out there who are either bitter or envious because of what you did not have to endure. You know, how many of you have been borderline on knee replacement surgery because of your ordination service? I've looked, I couldn't find anywhere in the Bible or the Constitution that it had to be a physically grueling process, which is why I instituted chairs several years back at a previous church. But there's several guys who are probably still mad about that. But church, these men have been set apart by God to fulfill a vital ministry in this church. Through the laying on of hands, you indicate recognition that they have been called to this ministry, and representation that they represent God and this church and our community. And as they enter into this ministry, they need our support and our affirmation. Do you pledge before God and these new deacons that you will pray for them and encourage them as they do the same for you? And if you do, would you indicate that by standing as we pray together? All right, let's pray together.